What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. Pretty simple and straightforward. We help each other make progress towards our goals. Arjuna, what's up, brother? How are you?
Hey, doing good. A little groggy, but here we are.
Here we are, man. I'm gonna
How about you?
Everything's going good, man. I'm super grateful and blessed in New York City right now, at one of my favorite spots on the planet. And it's just a quick reminder to everybody. If you haven't rewarded yourself in a while, please do so. There's always, as a man, there's always a bunch of reasons why you don't deserve it, or you don't have the resources for it. You don't have the time, the money, the support, the blah, 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 blah. But in my opinion, look at it as almost like a biological fact. You have to have a feedback mechanism that says, hey, you're on the right path. If you don't do that, if you don't reward yourself for a long enough period of time, you will not stay motivated. At least if you're anything like me. So I'm on like a work / goals / pleasure retreat right now in New York City, and absolutely loving it. So how about you? How you doing, brother? And Paulo, what's up, dude?
Oh, me? I'm doing good. Were you asking me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. There's a huge lag.
I hear you. I don't see the movement though.
All right, I think you're all good. So Arjuna,
Hey,
sorry we cut you off, brother.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I'd say rewarding yourself is very important. I'm a squirrel brain, so I'm always go, 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 go. So like, if I'm not giving myself a little reward every now and again, like sometimes, honestly, I think that's why I get sick, is because I think the universe sometimes forces my hand and it's like, yo, slow down. And sometimes I feel like that's just because my energy levels are always up here. And yeah, just slow down, give yourself some credit for where, the work you've done, and actually be able to like take some time to do the things you appreciate doing. I know we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to keep going here.
Yeah, without a doubt. And remember, like the classic, like for all of us, activity does not mean progress. Just because you are doing things does not mean you're doing something towards an end goal. So I have found finding the levers towards something meaningful, that's kind of the cheat code to where you don't have to be operating at 1,000 RPMs always. In fact, I could even argue that if you do that, you're going to burn out at some point. But today I wanted to talk about, and we can have a quicker session. I know Arjuna's got to run, and we're here out doing this goal planning session at some point here soon. But I stumbled across a pattern that I found repeatedly, and in particular with people's careers, and now like in our business, I found this pattern, and it's a matter of, okay, in your career, are you finding the value frontier? So where's the perimeter right now in your industry, or your career, your business, where all of the landscape to date has been documented, and you might be in an area where you're still getting through that landscape. So for instance, if you are a busboy at a restaurant, right, that is already very well documented. Like you have a job description, you know exactly what to do, et cetera. So you're within the current documented geographical space of what is already known. You will only get paid in correlation with that, if that makes sense. And that's okay. It's your job to keep on going to the perimeter of the current value frontier, if that makes sense. It's not until you get to the perimeter that then you can make a huge leap forward, because you're now creating in an unknown space. And that's where the enormous reward is. But the problem I've noticed with men, and at times myself, is like, we don't think of it that way. It's like, oh, well, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's like, yeah, well, that's because that particular industry, right, is multi decades old. So it takes a while to traverse through the known landscape until you get to the perimeter. Then, but here's the problem, most men stop before that time. And then they pivot over to a new gold shiny object into another industry or whatever, right? And therefore they start all over again. Versus keep on going to the edge of that landscape, then figure out how to create from there. And that's where, in my opinion, basically 97% of the rewards are, because you're now creating new value that did not exist. So I'll pause there. Arjuna, let me throw the ball over to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, first, yeah, I really appreciate the topic because I find it very relatable. I was actually just talking with my girlfriend about this the other day. Um, so I work at a pizza place, and I kind of got the job on a fluke. I was doing construction, that place imploded, and so I was just looking for work, and so I started doing the job like pantry. So I wasn't necessarily making pizzas or anything like that. I'm just doing like appetizers and whatnot, and that's usually where they start people there. And then they train you up from there. And from there, I've only really been doing like pizza making. And then so there's like the pizza oven, and then there's stretching the dough. And I was just thinking about how I keep myself, I have some level of fear and ambition that keeps me from knowing and understanding the other occupations. So, and what I really, really appreciate about the structure of this particular company and the business owners is like they put a lot of time into going to meetings on how to run a good business. Like they have a really good system set up for the employees to feel valued and even. And so the more valued you are through the way that you learn, the money reflects that. Like you get raises accordingly. And so I was just telling my girlfriend how it's crazy how even in knowing in this structure, how I still have this lack of ambition to master every job, every occupation, and then have the top salary, and then be able to create value on top of that. I think I was telling you a few weeks back how I tried to address a confrontational employee and no one else knew how to deal with it. And then I was in consideration for a raise just for doing that. My boss came to me and said, "Hey, no one would have the ability to talk to someone when this tension was building. And I want to let you know that when money comes in for a raise, you are the first priority because you interjected in these ways." So it showed me right there that I'm creating value outside of the things that are like, he literally said, you're getting a raise for something that's more valuable than the things that we teach inside of here. That's what you're talking about, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, the perimeter of that value is like, hey, I just do my job that I was paid for. But honestly, a lot of times it's not even as glamorous or as extravagant as one might think. It might just be, hey, do your job with an outstanding attitude. Show up on time, right? Like do it, put a little bow on it. Do you know what I mean? So adding that extra little piece can exceed the current value frontier that exists. Pablo, let me throw it over to you. What's your perspective, pal?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thank you. So sorry about that. Okay.
Okay,
So I'm a valet, and if I had to try to relate to that question, I'm at the peak of my career with this company right now, and that I'm managing my own account, and by managing I mean it's just me and then sometimes another guy, and I got to this business just because of geography. Like I happen to live closer than anybody else in the company, and so it was a chronic problem trying to staff that one. So I solved that problem for them, and in effect, I got a raise for it because I get to keep all the tips, and that's not usually the case. So, like in a sideways way, I was adding value because I solved a problem. Because that place was nobody wanted to go all the way out there to make just a little, money. It's not worth the gas. So by solving that problem for them, I got myself a little raise, and I got a more of a sense of responsibility because I get to run it how I want. I try to develop relationships with the restaurants that are there instead of just doing like the bare minimum, because no matter what I do, at another account, I would just be making my hourly. Whereas here, I have like a marginal control over how much money I make.
So let me ask you this, Pablo, if you don't mind, and let me know if I'm putting you too much on the hot seat here. And Arjuna, I want to throw it over to you. Also, for those of you who know, Colin just joined. He is one of my business partners. Outstanding man. So, Colin, thanks for joining. He's actually on the trip with me right now.
Well, can I just say one thing, Wes? I've become famous for joining Zoom calls with my shirt off when I meet people for the first time.
Respect.
So I just wanted to introduce myself and say thanks for having me, but please don't let me hold up the conversation any longer.
Those freshly polished nipples, dude. That's nice.
That's right. That's right.
So, Pablo, let me throw and ask you this question, and tell me to back off if you don't want to go deeper into it.
Sure.
What, if you think about what you're making right now, and if I had to force you to say, hey, how can you make 10 times that amount? As corny of a question as that is, what comes to mind? And Arjuna, prep yourself because I'm going to ask you the same thing. Number one, can you even psychologically and emotionally accept that, right? Or is there initial resistance that comes up in the subconscious? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this week too. Just in the abstract, yeah, if I wanted to make 10 times more than I'm making now, I would start my own valet company. I would like poach this account and then, get some others. So, I mean, theoretically, that's one way I could do it. I'm kind of maxed out on like, the income this way, doing like hourly type of work because I can't make more cars come in. The traffic is what traffic is going to be. And I can only very marginally catch a few more, cars based on, my performance or the way I set up the job. But also when you say psychologically, can I accept that? On a small scale, I can't. I notice I'm trying to be humble in a way that's like self-defeating. Like if I stay at a very low level of income, somehow like that makes me a good person. But if I make more money, then I don't know. There's something I'm afraid of because then like it may be like if I'm a shitty, lazy person or something, but I'm not making much money anyways. Like you can't really hate me for it. But if I'm like making $20-$30 an hour and I have like bad character, then you can kind of like, oh man, fuck that guy. Like I don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very common narrative. I could tell you that I grew up in a very similar type of mindset, almost to the point where what I would actually peg it to now is a toxic mindset. But the funny thing is, where I was before, they would label abundance as a toxic mindset. Why would you do that? Why would you spend it? And it's like, so to help counterbalance that, it's like, okay, well, how about this? When those people say that to you, or when your brain says it to you, it's like, okay,
it's just my brain.
Right. Where's the cutoff? Tell me to the penny where the cutoff is, where if you make more than this, you're an asshole. There's no real cutoff. Yep. Sorry, please, Pablo, go ahead.
And where that margin occurs isn't really an hourly number, but it's more because it's all tip based. And I feel like almost apologetic when somebody gives me like a really big tip, and like that's where the where the psychological threshold is, I guess. If you're asking for that, like let's say $30, I start to feel like, oh wow, like I didn't do anything to deserve that. Or like $20, that's a lot, but like I'm like, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, can I give the other side of it if that's okay? Because I wish somebody would have taken the time when I was sort of like going up. And by the way, like I'm hoping that somebody beyond my current level helps me in this particular way, if you don't mind me saying that. So I'll give you an example. Literally right now, my mom is driving to spend the day with us. And in New York City, you can imagine, right? Like parking is not exactly right? Like easy. So, Kyle, what's up, dude? So like where you work, Pablo, if you don't mind me asking, how much does it cost for somebody to valet?
Well, there there is no cost, and I can't tell them that it's a minimum. I have to say like it's all tips. But
Oh, got it.
just for
So it's
reference,
zero. It's zero plus tips.
yeah, yeah. So, but for reference, like the area I work in is like upper middle class, and just based on what people give without prompting, like $5 is kind of a minimum acceptable tip.
Got it.
Anything less than that,
Got it.
I'm like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah. So okay. So the baseline is zero plus whatever cherry on top they're willing to give, right? So I will tell
Yeah.
you this, coming from an actual pragmatic standpoint. I just called the concierge here, said, "Hey, how much does it cost to park?" And then plus tip. So it's $105 just to get like to go and park, and then you have to pay the tip, right? So we went from
Mm-hmm.
$0 that you're currently where you're at to $100, then plus tip. Does that make sense? So, and
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you, being on the payer side of that, phenomenally happy to pay it. Because now what that allows me to do is not to spend my time to go and drive around the city to try to find a parking garage, which I do not want to do because my mom's here for a limited amount of time. So getting back to your apologetic nature about like, hey, I'm taking this person's money. It's like, don't do, if you don't mind me saying this, that's not your job to do the emotional and psychological work of the payer. I guarantee you they've already done it, right? Like I've already made the decision. I'm happy to give that money. It is a tremendous value to me. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, dude, you take that money because the person who's paying has already concluded that it's of value. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we're bringing, and I've been here many times, and still, in fact, like, have psychological friction. Um, Colin and I charge for certain things, and I still have this monkey in my brain saying, "Oh my gosh, that's too high." It's again, it's the same. It doesn't matter what the number is. It doesn't matter if it's $30, $100, $200, $1,000, etc. There's no limit. It's all in our brain, and I don't mean to sound so like abstract about it, but that's just true. I mean, it's just true. Like there is no ceiling, at least than I can reasonably say. Colin, have you seen a ceiling yet? That was concrete and not inside of your own brain.
No, not at all. Yeah, Pablo, just to level, like, I can appreciate where you're coming from. My grandfather,
Yeah.
the entire time I grew up, said like if anybody was making reasonable money, he thought that they were doing something shady or illegal, and there's no way to get ahead without screwing somebody over. It's not a zero sum game, man. Again, like Wes said, yeah, they've already calculated what their time is worth. Matter of fact, we have a business coach that asked us to do the same thing. And he asked us, hey, calculate what your time is worth. And it's actually a reasonably simple calculation. And if it's easier for them to hand you $20 to valet park the car as opposed to circling the block a few times,
That's
that
what
in
they're
their
doing.
mind is a huge win. Right. And by the way, it's not like you dented their car and scratched it on the way. You provided value, right? You did something that they would have otherwise done had to do themselves. So, don't diminish the value you're creating because of. And believe me, man, I have the same head trash. I think that'll be with you all the way up. Whatever rung of the ladder that you're on. But you got to keep reminding yourself that, hey, I'm out here providing value to somebody that's willingly paying me for my value in return. There's no gun to their head, right? To hand that $20 bill over or whatever that amount is. And also, I do want to sometimes tip the wait staff or whatever service that is being provided for me. I sometimes do want to tip them over market value. Maybe you were a lot better at the service that you gave them than the last time they valeted the car, right? Maybe the last time they valeted the car, it was an absolute nightmare, right? And they are now benchmarking their experience to what value you just provided them. So I appreciate and respect where the comment and the concern is coming from. But ultimately, man, you're out there hustling, you're busting your butt, you are providing a service, and you deserve to charge for that or be compensated for that service. And in a tip based economy, if it's $5 or $50, that was the value that the person on the other end of the transaction perceived the value to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean,
If I could,
if you think about the scale, oh yeah, please. Yeah, Arjun, later, bud. Yeah, Pablo, please, bud.
if I could kind of more delineate where the psychological boundary is for me too, it's like, again, well, actually, I guess I didn't say this the first time. This is the first job where it isn't just I work X amount of hours
Yeah.
and I get my hourly rate times however many hours I worked. I can affect what I make, and also it is a little bit of a hustle because like what my job isn't like I'm given explicit permission to do something. I mean, I am the property manager contracted my company who sent me out there to service the account, but like I'm allowed to use a certain strip of this street to park my cars. I put cones out there, and like I gotta fight for them sometimes, and I'm not used to that. Like people like see cones, and you have to consider every possible reason people would interpret that to be, oh, that's saved for me. So I used to go out there and run laws like, hey, sir, no, you can't do this. This is valet parking. That part was really hard for me. Like I was the one having to represent that. Like these are the rules now. I'm sorry that I'm taking away a spot from you, but this is valet parking now, and blah blah blah. Like I'm really not used to doing that, so that could be one reason I have like this whole apologetic disposition.
Sure.
And I'm not like a natural salesman or whatever, and I'm trying to like incorporate more like a sales mentality into this too. But like maybe you kind of have a picture now of like my really like overly humble, limiting mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can completely understand that. And look, I mean, you are escalating your skill set to now deal with more complex and nuanced problems. So if we look, I mean, I just did some rough calculations on a few CEOs that like are in the spotlight, whether it be like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, et cetera. So if we are crazy conservative on what they made last year, right? Crazy conservative, $4 million an hour. $4 million an hour. And I think I may even have the numbers wrong. It might even be well north of that, right? So it's like you are dealing with more complex problems, charge for that. Let the market determine whether or not they can pay for that. But when you just think of a scale, and Pablo, I'll push on you a little bit in a good way, right? Think about what you just said a few like 10 minutes ago. Hey, it'd be crazy. It'd be cool if I made, $30 an hour or something like that. Think about that. Now, I said this guy and several people made $4 million an hour. That's like hard to even quantify. Patty P, let me throw it over to you. You're just in Coachella, which I'd imagine there's some pretty wealthy people there. What's your perspective on this?
It was the land of the influencers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Give me a spark notes of what are we talking about again?
Going through basically, right, like, first of all, paying your dues in whatever industry you're operating in so that you can get to the edge of what I'm calling the value frontier. Learning the entire landscape, whether it be in the music industry or in the valet industry or the finance industry, whatever it is, you have to pay your dues to learn the current amount of documentation, like the playbook that's already been written. Then once you get there, your toes are hanging off of the edge of that frontier. Now you can create additional value and get heavily compensated. So like almost like this hockey stick chart up. So Patty P, is that enough background for you?
Yeah. It's kind of like you have to be ready to jump in the like you become a big fish in a small pond, so you have to like go into a bigger pond, and it's pretty scary to do shit like that. For
Yep.
What I just did, I took this job on like 5 days notice, and then I just got back yesterday and made more money than I've ever made on tour, which is great. But the pressures that kind of come with that, and then like you're always going to learn new stuff each step of the way. So my thing is kind of like, if I can't get too wrapped up in the numbers, I kind of just have to trust the process, or otherwise I'm going to go crazy, or I'm going to like compromise my values to, make extra money, which I've done in the past, and I've like learned from that in the past. So it's just kind of like find the next step and just go to it, and then I think the money kind of follows eventually.
Well, let me ask you
anyway.
this. Let me ask you this, because I gave the same question to Pablo. If I had to say, hey, what would it look like for you to make 10 times what you're making right now? When I say that, and think about what that number is. And if you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind sharing what you think that number is, you don't have to do the math, but it's like, hey, what would escape velocity look like? Like, what would be funny money to me, right? And then as I ask you that, is there any resistance that you have in your brain or your body when I say that? Like, I'm not worthy of it, or I don't want to do it, or I've got to compromise my values to do it. Is there any sort of resistance that comes up?
No, I don't think like resistance might not be the right word for it. Maybe more like I don't know, because like whatever my like escape velocity is, it's just like, which would be probably being gone like on tour or whatever, like at least 4 months out of the year. Like, do I want to get to that point to where I'm gone 9 months out of the year? Probably not. But if it's the right situation and I'm treated well, that's kind of really all that matters to me now. And
if you, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
If you had to give a number to what that was, and said, okay, this would be the number that would be funny money to me. Like, life would be good, right? And also on your terms.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to make 50,000 a year, 100,000 a year, 200, a million, whatever that is. So right? And on my terms, not compromising my values, not being on tour 98% of the time, etc.
Yeah. So there is a point to where like I would make like, so if I could go out and do what I just did, 5 or 6 times out of the year, I'd probably be fine. So usually, say my day rate was like, I don't know, it's different based upon different things. So like on tour, it could be like anywhere from like 250 to like whatever, 250 a day. Well, on this last run, I'd made like 430 a day. It came out to like 3,000 a week. So it's like I go out for 3 weeks and I make $9,000, and you save your taxes on it. And then if I just do that a bunch of times, I mean, ideally, but I mean, for me, it's like anytime my day rate goes above like $300 on average, it's pretty good for me.
Yeah, so let's dissect this. So if you don't mind me asking, think about when you started, right? And so you just made 9,000 over, you said 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Right. When you were just starting, what was your weekly or monthly rate just starting out?
My first job out of college I was making $16.50 an hour at the casino, and that was good money.
Yeah. Right. So I would already argue you've already 10x'd where you came from. So if we ever need evidence of like, 10x is not possible from here, you probably would have said the same thing, not you, but just in general, the same thing for starting out.
Right. Yeah, and I saw people like back when I was doing that, still super green and stuff, and I just saw people that would come in and be like on tour and be like, shit, when that situation's good, it's great. Like the artist that I was just with and her team, like, were like legitimately good and funny people and like good to be around, which like, I've not ever had that really, like, in this line of work. It's just been kind of like, it's dog eat dog or whatever. And so I made a point for like this year to be like, okay, I'm just going to try to work with like good people. And then if that's not an option, I'll just stay home, and then
Yeah.
kind of working out for me. I got to it was nice. We got to do Coachella, but it was like our set was at like 3 o'clock. So like I got to just hang out the rest of the day. It's pretty neat. Walk around and see all these dumb ass people.
So let's dissect this. I'd imagine it's a pretty wild people watching situation at Coachella. Is that a fair statement?
I mean, if you travel enough in a short amount of time, it's good people watching everywhere. But yeah, Coachella is definitely. I don't know. From what I understand, this year's crowd was very subdued, but I don't know. Just looked like a bunch of people walking around, spending money and taking pictures, and being concerned with their status rather than.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen anything from the festival, but like on weekend one, Blur played, and the singer was just like over the audience, legendary band or whatever, and the singer was just like basically told the audience like they suck, like just. But that's for them, whatever. But my crowd and my artists, we did great. It was a good time for me. So
awesome. So let's dissect this. So you made 9,000, and thank you for sharing the numbers, by the way. So 9,000 over 3 weeks. You're already 10x from where you came from, et cetera, more than 10x. And you said I'm assuming you can command similar rates at similar types of events. If you had to guess, how many events like that exist in the country throughout the year?
I mean, just like festival events.
Yeah, and you have to excuse my ignorance. I'm so ignorant of that entire world. Like, yeah, how many events exist like those types of festivals?
So just imagine, okay, so like my artist that she's going back to Europe, and then it's festival season, so she's just gonna go boing, 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 like just it is a season. A festival is literally just like a season. So like there's like one, every week when it's not, during this part of the, time of the year or whatever. And Coachella kind of kicks that off, I guess, just because the weather is nicer or whatever.
So if you had to guess how many, just give me a number. Like, and it's okay if you're wrong.
Oh, fuck. I don't know. Hundreds,
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's hundreds of festivals. I'd be curious, not that you're asking for it, so tell me to shut up whenever. I'd be curious what happened. So you said if you had to do how many in a year, that would make you happy?
Well, and I don't know, because it's like, it's not just one thing for me. So like in like 2 weeks, so I'm home now, but I'm going back out in 2 weeks, but I'm doing a totally different job. I'm being a drum tech for a Swedish prog band.
Okay.
Which I'll get paid less, but it's a different job, and I'm trying to like diversify and like, do all that stuff. So my metrics now, I don't know. I don't want to say money's like not important, but it's just like I like to go out and snatch a bag and then reevaluate. And that's kind of like if I get the opportunity to do that, I don't know, 3 to 6 times a year, and then supplement it with because I get a lot of work when I'm at home that pays pretty decently.
Yeah. So I'd be curious. So let's assume they're all on a 3-week cycle, right? So you make $9,000 every 3 weeks if you were to get a handful of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fair statement. So if you did 5 of those, you'd make $45,000.
Yeah, and that, I mean, for me, that's like exit velocity, because I've made more money each year that I freelance minus COVID, which I probably made good money during COVID because I got unemployment, but I spent it all on drugs and alcohol. But yeah, so like I've made more money, but if like I can get up, that's like, a big extra pad that I would have, because my wife, she makes like, a good amount of money working from home. So it's just like, I'm just figuring out, marriage and all that kind of stuff, but it's just like there definitely is like a long term kind of plan or whatever when it comes to like putting our resources together to like
right.
access our shared goals.
Right. No, I completely agree. And because what I'm trying to do is show you, right, the levers here. Like if I were, let's say, investing in your company, again, not that you're asking, but just, as a guy in this circle here, if you're telling me, right, that you made $9,000 in 3 weeks, and you're also telling me that the market exists where there's hundreds of these things, hundreds of events that could potentially pay you in a similar pattern, then all you have to do, if you just need 3 to 5 of those, and I picked the upper end of that, 5, which means you would make 45K, which gives you escape velocity, right? Then that means you only have to get, right, like a fraction of those 100. So then I would be curious, and same thing to Pablo, right, of like finding those levers. Okay, well, what would happen if I just started reaching out to those hundreds? What would it really take for me to get 5?
That's exactly how I got this gig. Like, I had a slow winter time, and like I was hitting the fucking shit like every day, just getting on my computer, turning in job, applying for this, applying for that, messaging people, doing everything. Like, finally, like, I made a point that this year it'll be like, I'm going to try to actually network, because I've never gave a shit about it before. And I was just like, fucking, I'll just work my fucking bones in the dust into perpetuity, because that's really fucking, who cares, blah, blah, blah. And then this job came out of someone from Instagram who was a sound person, and she reached out to me and was just like, "Hey, you available for this? Here's their number." And then 5 days later, I'm in fucking Toronto.
Yep, 100%. And so what I would want all of us to hear, including myself, is like, this is an iterative process. Always, always, always get yourself to the perimeter of value, and then find out where the next lever is.
The pond. Right? So hop in the pond, hop in the bigger pond.
Exactly. And don't be scared of hopping in that bigger pond, right? So like, can Pablo find the next lever? Can he say, okay, well, maybe I'm tapped out of just working at this valet. Like, how can I start my own? Or can I go over to the more wealthy part of town, right? Like, oftentimes it's nothing on your side. It's just finding a better customer and doing the same stuff, but you find a bigger pool of money, and that's the lever. Patty, I would argue that's exactly what you just did, right? You probably did the same exact stuff that you normally do. You found a better customer who can pay you 5, 8, 9, 10 times as much.
Yeah.
DJ, I'm imagining Delco Jim. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Delco Jim,
I'd imagine.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. Delco Jim, can you hear us, bro? You might not be able to hear us. Logan, let me throw it over to you, because I'm pretty sure your background is in sales. Let me know if I'm wrong on that.
That's definitely right.
Minus a few Colts sprinkled in there, if my memory also serves me correctly. Does this conversation of leverage, like, actually, you know what? I want to put a little twist on this. If you were in Patty P's shoes or in Pablo's shoes, do you feel like you could instantly increase earnings potential because of your sales background, making some more calls, sending out some more emails, etc.?
So I think there's an interesting there's an interesting thing with sales stuff. So I think to me, one of the big things is when we're in this weird age where we're at right now, where it's just like mass marketing. You can send out 100 million emails, you're going to get 1 million that convert, and then you're going to be a millionaire. I heard this line one time that was is always in the back of my head, where it's like, you're 2,000 cold calls away from being a millionaire. And I kind of think that there's something in that's true. And it's just like having the endurance to go through and keep calling and keep picking up the phone and keep sending that next email. Or like I actually started in sales as like a fundraiser. So they literally put me on a street corner and were just like, go get 10 credit cards today. So that was how my path into this started. I think that there's a thing where whenever you're trying to sell a product, there are mechanisms that it's critical to learn how to do. And I think that I work with startup companies. So one of the things that I've seen is like, you'll see these engineers be like, I have the greatest idea. And it's just this dude who's like, I built an app, and then he has no idea how to engage with that and get that in front of people. I think that learning how to sell what you're doing, and that includes positioning it. So kind of to your point, Wes, in terms of, it's easier to sell one thing for $10,000 than 1,000 things for $10. You know what I mean? And it's just like
100%.
there is that balance that you have to have in what you're doing. And like I think that finding the ideal product market fit for what you're selling is, it's really important. And then there's the component of it that it's just a function of volume, where it's just like, if you talk to enough people, if you get in front of enough people, if what you're selling has value and you believe in that, and that's been demonstrated to you, and you understand that, and you can convey that, you'll find the person who believes that too. And I think the problem with sales stuff is you get the worst, how do you put it? You get the worst rep in terms of like talking people. You're not talking people into anything. You're giving them what they need, and they're paying you a lot because you found them. You know what I mean? So you're paid for the journey, not for the sale. And like for me, that's always been how I've thought about that, right? And it's just like you're fighting through 99% of the thing to get to that 1% of the thing, and then you're there, and then it works. And like it's not just like, oh, they signed a thing. It's like there's a whole path through that. But yeah,
right.
Sorry, that was
100%. No, 100%. I mean, and right, like one of the things I love about this group is just being fully candid. And so the number that I'm about to ask Colin is not for me to sound like a jerk at all. It's almost like the anti-guru conversation, but to prove a point and say, like, for anybody who's hesitant to ask for money out there in exchange for real value, right? That's a key part. Like in exchange for real value, and in my opinion, always produce 10 times more value than you charge for it. And I don't mean that as some bullshit phrase. I mean that sincerely. Like, have that be the intention. So I started out, I actually told Colin this yesterday. I started out, I sold toys and candy bars when I was a kid. And then that graduated into other stuff, eventually landscaping and blah, 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 blah. Colin, so candy bars back then would cost $1.50. That's how much I would sell them for. Colin, if you don't mind sharing, what do we now sell our baseline services for?
Yeah.
How much is one cost?
Well, it started at $0, and then on our end
Also
went
true.
to $500. Then it went to $2,500, and now it's doubled again. So $5,000 for a planning fee for a client.
Wow.
Yeah.
What up, dogs?
And what's up, Beast? And anybody who hears that, number one, we are not saying that at all to brag, right? Like, so if you're thinking, oh, what a douchebag, that has nothing to do with this. This is not some sort of like infomercial. It's to prove a point of like, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, hey, could you guys be selling for that level? I would have told you you're crazy.
Yep.
But in the subconsciously, it would have been, I'm not worth it. That's only meant for other guys. Or the other guys who say that, they're lying, right, etc. It's all in here, in my opinion. Now, you have to build up the value pyramid there, right? There's got to be a huge iceberg of value. But then it's like, you'd be shocked about how much limitation is in your head. DJ, let me throw the mic over to you, bro. Number one, how's your career going? Number two, have you noticed the same trajectory where you start off at not even zero, you start off at negative, and then to get to the next level, oftentimes it's just the head trash inside of your skull?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started doing this, it felt like I was just hemorrhaging money, chasing something that felt like unattainable. But like the longer I did it and the more I worked, the more shit, came my way. And now it's like I'm like going on tour and shit. Like I'm traveling around the country, getting a lot of spots. It's just powering through, you know what I mean? Just suffering through the lows, you know what I mean? I had like a bunch of shit happen. Like there were times I wanted to quit. Like I literally went through facial paralysis. I wanted to quit then. I got, I lost my job and I had all this shit and I fucking had no money. I wanted to quit then. And then, I recently, my mother passed away. Like, and, I live at home still, just saving money and shit. But like, I lost my mom. I wanted to fucking stop then. And like, just every time something comes up, I just keep pushing and going. And I always reap the rewards of it. I haven't been, burned at all by being persistent. So that's the one thing. And like, this is the first time that I've ever done something that I've committed to. This is the first thing that I've ever stuck through my entire life. You know what I mean? I've always lost interest in stuff when it got hard. You know what I mean? So that's just been my entire life up into this one thing that I've really loved so far. So it's a process, and I don't know if I'm going to, quote unquote, make it. But I'm going to try. And, for right now, like, I'm doing all right. Like I'm surviving off of it for the time being. I'd rather thrive, but surviving is pretty sick. Like being able to pay bills with this thing I love. So it's like, and it's just, 3 years. It took 3 years to get to a point where I can reliably, look at my schedule and actually start to budget. That's a huge thing for me, being able to budget and being financially literate, because I come from a long line of people that never knew anything about saving money, or just in general, budgeting, time management, all of that shit, travel expenses, all of that. So I'm like the first person in my family to have to do all of these things, and I'm enjoying learning. And that's like the thing about it that's so cool, is that I learn every day. That's what I didn't get a formal education. I never went to college, but like I'm learning every day, out here doing stand-up. So it's really cool.
And let me ask you this, Delco Jim, if you think about what you're making now, or like, let's say your most recent tour, or let's even say even better, your highest paid tour or show, and think about what you first started making, how many times more are you making now than you were then, if you don't mind sharing? You don't have to say the number, but like how many multiples more?
1,000 times.
Yeah. So 3 years to make 1,000 times more. Right. This is why I keep on telling people, including myself, by the way, of like, although it sounds big to say, hey, get 10 times bigger, we automatically say, oh, that's not possible. Delco Jim, right, saying he'd make 1,000 times more. And by the way, I believe him. And also, right, like I've got clients where I literally know their financials, and it's the same thing. So we often think, oh, it's this impossible thing. And now I'm not saying it happens overnight, but 3 years, like Delco Jim, if I would say, hey, man, all you have to do is take 3 years and you will 1,000x the return, what is the obvious answer you would have said?
Crazy.
Yeah, right? It's just that we don't know that ahead of time, so we feel like we're going into an abyss. And then we stop before we get to the edge of like where the real results are. And then we pivot over to something else. We have a pity party. We tell ourselves we're not worth it, or we say that's only for other people, not me. Versus like, what if you just stuck with it, something that you were into, and you kept on going through, and then you expanded on the value? Phil, let me throw it over to you, brother. What comes up for you, man?
Yo, hope you guys can hear me. I'm in the same bad connection, but so actually exactly what you're just saying, Wes, is what I'm like failing to commit myself to every day, because like trying to keep it short here. I released a game in November. It sold a lot better than I expected, but it made like $10,000 or whatever. And now, like almost every game, like everyone says, the sales have dropped off literally to zero. I make almost $0 every day. So basically, I've been constantly trying to think like I have this new idea the next game I want to make that I'm really excited about, and I cannot get myself to commit to one or the other. It's either stop working on this game and work on the other one, or keep working on keep adding new stuff to this game and hope that increases the sales, because like it seems like it was popular enough that that it basically seems like it was somewhat popular, but it never reached any kind of like critical mass. Like there's almost the people on YouTube who've made videos about my game have like 400,000 views, which feels like a lot to me. I don't really know, but there's only like 5 of those people. There's not like 100 people making videos about my game or whatever. So it just feels like basically it feels like I never reached like it feels like almost no one ever became aware of my game for whatever reason. So I'm just like in this place where I'm like, it's a big time commitment either way. It's like months of work either way to work on a new game that maybe that game won't sell at all either. These things are very like, it's like gambling. It's really hard to predict. So I don't know. It's just really frustrating that I can't commit to it. Like I'm just frustrated with myself that I can't commit to it. I don't know. I really want, like the decision is basically also like, am I going to be angry at myself if I just drop this game and be like, it could have been bigger, it could have been cooler, more people could have known about it if I would have kept working on it. And a friend of mine on a guy I know on Twitter, just recently said he sold more money. He kept working on his game and he just actually put out a big update. And he just recently said on Twitter, he said he sold more copies in the last 6 days than he sold in the first month of sales. Because he just put it in, he thinks that it's hard to know why. It's hard to know why, but he thinks it's just because he kept putting out updates and he just recently put out a big update. So, but also people say, some people say the opposite. Some people be like, yeah, I kept updating my game and it never went anywhere. So, that's just where I'm stuck at right now. And yeah.
Do you mind if I comment on that, Phil?
Yeah.
So not knowing anything about the gaming industry, quite obviously, I think there's a distinction there that I think I know about your story and your product, which is, I think for the people who say the opposite of like, hey, I've worked on this forever and it's not worked, I think where your story is a bit different is the distinction is you've already tested the market and the market has shown approval. Do you know what I mean? So like, for what it's worth, if I were in your shoes, not that this is advice, but if I were in your shoes, I would very likely quadruple down on the already beta tested, like market tested, activity, and then iterate from there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Delco Jim, maybe if you don't mind commenting on that, like it's like how many times do you have to iterate on your set or your jokes to where now it's max velocity, max market. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so like I just, I keep pounding the same thing until you're hammering it out. Now we live in the age, like the thing with the games is we live in the age where there's constantly, we want more. There's constantly shit coming out, downloadable content, blah, 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 updates, yada, yada, all of that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a world where you're able to do both things? That's what I would try to explore. Is there a world where you can lend some of that passion that you have for this one game into this other project while also figuring out how to keep the other one alive? Like I think there is a world where both can happen, and that's the thing. Like you build a bigger brand that way. Like you put out another game, right, and then there's like you start building a library of titles under a thing that you've created, and people get excited for that too. Like it's just so much you could do, like people like like my buddies, they still play Skate 3. That's an old fucking game, dude, and they're constantly doing shit for it. So it's like I the video game thing is so fascinating because it's just it's such a huge market, and like you see how like some people like the Fortnite is a free game, right, and they make money hand over fist every day because all they do is crank out downloadable content and microtransactions and all of that stuff. So it's really about like how to there's just it's such a big thing that I don't really know a lot about, but I know that like we're a very like needing gratification people now, and it's like they need that like that hit, that new thing every few minutes.
Yeah.
Well, and I would add to the final thing here, if you guys are okay, because I got a jet. is remember, like, where's the Venn diagram of what do I intrinsically like doing, to the point, as cliche as it sounds, to the point where even if I were not paid, to the point where if I had to pay, I'd still do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I see in Delco Jim's story. I could, go on and on of all the men that I've seen do this. And then it's like, how, as Kevin Kelly said in that Wired article a long time ago, it's like, where's my 1,000 true fans? So only working to Patty P's comment earlier of, like, at a certain point when I've paid my dues, I want to serve only the people that I want to serve, that I enjoy serving, right? There's mutual respect, etc. And then, right, like, how can I make the maximum return, assuming I'm committing the maximal effort and value to those people? If you take care of those 4 things, man, that's how you get a Delco Jim result of, hey, I'm making 1,000 times more than I was. And I see no reason that Delco Jim can't make 1,000 times more than what he's currently making, because he knows, and I know, that there's some people in his industry that he is aware of that are making 1,000 times more than he is right now. Is that a fair statement, Delco Jim?
Oh, dude, yeah. There's levels to this shit.
Yeah. So play the game that you can play in perpetuity, and serve the people that you want to serve in perpetuity. And then, yeah, you have to come to these forks in the road like Phil's coming to, of like, hey, do I stop working on this and work? Then that's just the curse of a creator, and it just requires judgment. The answer today might be different than the answer tomorrow, but, like, never stop chopping wood and trying to produce value for others. So, Delco Jim, given that you are the honorary guest of today, any final words of wisdom, my friend?
Shit. I would say just keep pushing, honestly. Like, even if it leads to nothing, you gotta be passionate about something. Fuck.
Love it. Succinct, well said. Thank you, dudes. I'm going to get out and play in New York City. I love you guys. Have a great week. I will see you all on Friday. Later, dudes.
Later.
Peace.